The chamber of the Galactic Council stood high above the clouds of Varaxis Prime, a colossal ring of light and steel, where thousands of alien delegates gathered in silence. At the center, humans stood alone. Commander Elias Kane, the last human officer of the Terran fleet, stood in chains made of light. His uniform was torn, his eyes tired, but his stance unbroken. Around him, the counselors whispered in dozens of alien tongues, judging the species they once called ally. High Chancellor Verex, a tall insectoid being, raised his hand. "Commander Kane," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "You are charged with defiance, destruction, and spreading the madness of humanity. How do you plead?" Kane looked up, his voice calm but cold. "Guilty. Of being human." A wave of murmurs filled the chamber. The translators flickered. Some council members looked uneasy. Others smiled cruelly. Verex's eyes narrowed. "You admit to your crimes, then?" Kane's lips curled into a faint grin. "You call it a crime to fight for freedom. We call it survival." For a moment, the hall fell silent. The tension was thick, the kind that comes before a storm. On the upper tiers, a group of human sympathizers looked down with helpless anger. They knew what was coming. The council had already made their decision. "Humanity is a threat to the balance of the galaxy," Rex declared. "Your kind cannot be allowed to rise again." Guards surrounded Kane, aiming plasma lances at his chest. But he didn't flinch. Instead, he raised his head toward the chamber's dome. Where the stars shimmered faintly through the transparent ceiling, he whispered, "They'll remember this." At that moment, far from Varaxis Prime, in a hidden asteroid base, a young engineer named Lyra Holt received a signal Kane's final transmission. Sent seconds before his capture, the message was short. "They will execute me soon. But they can't kill what we are. If one human falls, 1,000 will rise." Back in the chamber, the council's execution beam charged. Bright blue energy hummed through the air. The aliens watched in silence, some with satisfaction, others with fear. "Any last words?" Verex asked. Kane smiled, a small, human smile that carried more defiance than any weapon. "Yeah," he said softly. "You've just made the biggest mistake in galactic history." Then the light struck him. A burst of white filled the hall. When it cleared, only ashes remained in silence. But in that silence, across the galaxy, something had changed. Human outposts went dark. Communication lines flickered with encrypted codes. And far away, deep in the void, human warships began to awaken. The galaxy didn't know it yet. But the execution of one man had just set the stars on fire. The stars above the asteroid base flickered like cold fire. The hidden human outpost, known only as Havanine, floated in the dark side of an uncharted system. Few knew it existed, and those who did never spoke of it. Inside the base, alarms had just begun to sound. Lyra Holt, a young engineer with sharp eyes and a quiet voice, ran through the narrow metallic halls. She reached the communication room, where a small hologram flickered weakly on the console. It was a message, a final transmission from Commander Elias. "Kane." Her hand shook as she pressed play. Kane's face appeared tired, bruised but calm. His voice was clear and steady. "They will execute me soon. But they can't kill what we are. Remember who you are. Remember what they did to us. If one human falls, 1,000 will rise." The hologram faded into static. The room was silent for a moment. Then a single tear rolled down Lyra's face. She turned to the small group of humans behind her, engineers, soldiers, refugees, the last free ones. Their faces were pale, their hearts heavy. For years they had lived in hiding, afraid to be found. But now, something had changed. Lyra took a deep breath. "He's gone," she said quietly. "The council executed him." No one spoke. The silence felt heavy. Then an older man, Captain Redden, stepped forward. His voice was rough and low. "They killed the only man who still believed peace was possible." Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, but he also believed that one day we would rise again." Maybe that day is now. Captain Redden looked at her. You're talking about war, Lyra. We don't have ships. We don't have weapons. The Council has thousands of fleets. Lyra's eyes burned with anger. Then we build them. Like we did before? From nothing. From scrap. That's what humans do. We survive. We adapt. Her voice grew stronger. They think humanity is finished. Let's prove them wrong. For a moment, no one said a word. Then, slowly, one by one, heads began to nod. The human spirit, the same defiance that once built empires and crossed, galaxies began to rise again. Hours later, deep in the engineering bay, Lyra and her team gathered around an old holographic star map. The systems of the galaxy glowed in different colors: blue for council control, red for restricted zones, and gray for dead worlds. Lyra pointed at a small blinking red light near the border of council space. This is Orion's grave, an abandoned shipyard. It's full of Terran wrecks from the old war. If we can get there, we can rebuild. Redden frowned. That's suicide. The Council's patrols are everywhere. We'll never make it past their scanners. Lyra smiled faintly. Unless we make them think we're already dead. Redden raised an eyebrow. You have a plan? She nodded. Kane's last message, it wasn't just words. It had a code buried in it. He must have hidden coordinates inside. I found them. The older man looked at her in shock. You mean he planned this? Yes, Lyra said softly. He knew what was coming. He left us a path. While Lyra and her team prepared to leave Havenine, the council world of Varaxis Prime celebrated in the capital city. Massive holograms of High Chancellor Varax covered the skyline. His voice echoed across the city. Peace has been restored. Humanity's rebellion has ended. The galaxy is safe again. The crowd cheered. But deep underground, not everyone was cheering in the dark corners of the city. Small encrypted messages began to appear on data screens in old Terran code. One simple phrase repeated again and again. They killed one of us. It was spreading through networks. Through forgotten channels, through whispers between traders and smugglers, the Council's sensors detected nothing unusual. But something invisible was growing, a storm of information, anger, and memory. Back on Haven 9, the human ship Echo 1 powered up for the first time in years. The engines roared like thunder in the silence of the asteroid field. The humans had repaired it from scrap, piece by piece, with nothing but hope and stubbornness. Lyra stood at the command deck, looking out at the stars. Set course for Orion's grave, she said. Redden gave a grim smile. For Kane? Lyra nodded. For all of us. The ship turned toward the black void. She looked down at the small holoprojector on her wrist, the one that still carried Kane's final words. She played it again, quietly. If one human falls, 1,000 will rise. She whispered to herself. Then let's rise. The engines flared, and the Echo 1 jumped into hyperspace, leaving a trail of light behind, far away. In the depths of space, satellites began to pick up strange readings. Ships vanishing from patrol zones. Weapons factories going dark. Communications jamming. The council analysts were confused. Minor interference, they said. But it wasn't interference. It was the beginning of something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. The beginning of the human rebellion. And soon, every star would know the name Elias Kane. The human ship Echoon cut through the darkness of space like a silver shadow. Inside, every sound felt alive. The hum of old engines. The beeping of scanners. The quiet breathing of a crew that had nothing left to lose. For the first time in years, humans were on the move. Lyra Holt stood at the front of the command deck, watching the endless stars. Her reflection glimmered on the glass. Tired eyes, but a determined face. Behind her, Captain Redden checked the navigation screens. We're 2 jumps away from Orion's grave, he said. Council patrols are thick around the border. If they catch us, it's over. Lyra didn't turn. Her voice was calm. They won't catch us. Not if we stay silent. The old man smiled faintly. Silent. That's not something humans are good at. Lyra looked over her shoulder. Then it's time we learn. Crew laughed softly, a nervous, human laugh, the kind that hides fear behind courage. The journey to Orion's grave took 3 days. The system was nothing but a graveyard of broken ships, wrecks from the old Human Council war. Thousands of shattered hulls floated in the void, silent reminders of a forgotten past. When Echo 1 entered the field, lights flickered across the debris. The scanners came alive with old Terran codes. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. This place, it's like a ghost fleet. Captain Redden nodded. And ghosts can fight, if you wake them. They docked the ship inside a massive, broken cruiser, once called the Valar, a Terran flagship from the final days of the war. Inside, the air was cold, thin, and still smelled of burned metal. As they explored, they found something unexpected. Rows of old fighters still locked in hangars, their power cores empty but intact. Human engineering built to last. Lyra touched one of the fighters gently. We can fix them, she said. We can bring them back. Her voice carried hope, and that was more powerful than any weapon. Back on Varaxis Prime, the Galactic Council had no idea what was happening. High Chancellor Varric sat in his private chamber, surrounded by glowing screens showing peaceful cities. Human resistance has ended, his assistant reported. No signals detected. No ships missing. Barks nodded slowly. Good. Then we move forward. The galaxy must forget humanity. But far from Varaxis, deep in the graveyard of ships, the galaxy was already remembering. Days passed. Inside the Valar, humans worked non-stop, welding metal, rerouting power, rebuilding old engines. Every sound echoed through the massive halls. Lyra stood with grease on her face, sparks flying around her as she connected a power relay. Almost there, she said. Once this reactor is stable, we'll have energy for the entire fleet. Captain Redden checked the monitors. Fleet? He said with a grin. You mean these old rust buckets? Lyra smiled back. They'll fly again. And when they do, the Council will see the fire they started. On the 7th day, something amazing happened. The reactor came online. A deep vibration filled the ship as power returned to ancient systems. Lights blinked to life one by one. Engines hummed. The ship that had been dead for decades was breathing again. Humans across the hangar stopped working. They looked around, the floor glowing beneath their feet, the air alive with energy. Lyra spoke softly into the com. Systems online. Terran fleet. Reactivated. Cheer broke out, loud, raw, human. But the moment didn't last long, Captain. A young operator shouted. Council patrol entering the system. 2 ships fast interceptors. Redden's face went pale. They've found us. Lyra didn't hesitate. Everyone to battle stations. Power up the cannons. But our weapons, they'll work, she said sharply. They have to. The 2 Council interceptors appeared from hyperspace, sleek and deadly. Their metallic voices echoed through the radio. Unidentified vessel, you are trespassing in restricted space. Identify yourself, or prepare to be destroyed. Her voice was steady. This is Echo, one of the Terran fleet. Pause. Then laughter came from the Council pilot. Terran fleet. That's impossible. Humanity is extinct. Lyra smiled grimly. Not anymore, she gave the order. Fire. The ship's old cannons roared to life, firing a bright beam of plasma that struck one of the interceptors head-on. The explosion lit up the dark field like a miniature sun. The second Council ship turned, firing wildly, but the humans were already moving. The fighters they had repaired launched from the hangar, streaking through space like fireflies of war. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. When it ended, silence returned. But now the silence felt different. Alive. Captain Redden looked out the window at the burning wreckage of the enemy ships. We just declared war, he said quietly. Lyra nodded. No, they did the day they killed Kane. We're just answering. She turned to her crew. Send a signal encrypted Terran code. Let every colony know. humanity is back. The message went out across the void, bouncing between satellites, hidden relays, and dark corners of forgotten worlds. This is Lyra Holt of the Terran fleet. Commander Kane's death will not be in vain. The fire has begun. Humanity lives. Somewhere, on a distant moon, a miner heard the message and smiled. On another world, a scientist looked up from his lab and whispered, "Finally," and in the shadows of Council space, silent human ships began to move. The galaxy was waking up. The rebellion had truly begun. The explosion of the Council. Patrol ships over Orion's grave spread through the galaxy faster than light. No one knew who fired first. No one admitted what truly happened. But one thing was clear: the humans were back, across dozens of systems. Whispers began to rise, whispers that carried fear, hope, and disbelief. A Terran ship destroyed a Council patrol. Humans. That's impossible. They said the Council executed the last one. In the dark corners of space, where smugglers, miners, and refugees lived far from the eyes of power, old Terran banners began to reappear. Small groups started meeting in secret. The message spread like fire. The humans are fighting back. On the hidden base at Orion's grave, Lyra Holt watched the news feeds with cold focus. The Council had begun emergency broadcasts, warning all species that rogue human terrorists had attacked peaceful fleets. She knew the truth didn't matter. What mattered was that people were finally listening. Captain Redden entered the control room, his face half lit by the blue light of the holographic screens. "The Council's in panic," he said. "They're moving fleets everywhere. They don't even know where we are." Lyra nodded slowly. "Good. Let them chase shadows," he smiled. "What's next?" She turned toward the glowing map. "We hit them again. And this time, we make sure the whole galaxy sees it." Meanwhile, on Varex's Prime, High Chancellor Varex stood in front of the Galactic Council. The chamber buzzed with tension. Reports came in from every corner: trade routes under attack, relay stations destroyed, colonies going dark. Varex slammed his fist against the table. "This cannot be real. Humans are extinct." A smaller alien diplomat spoke nervously. "Our sensors confirm human signatures, Chancellor. Old Terran ships, but upgraded. Faster than before." The room fell silent. Varex's metallic eyes narrowed. "Then burn every system where they hide. No mercy. No survivors." The Council voted, and the order was clear: extermination protocol, to erase every sign of human life. But it was already too late. Back at Orion's grave, dozens of human ships were now active: small fighters, stealth cruisers, and drones rebuilt from the graveyard's scrap. Lyra and her team worked day and night. They had no army, no planets. But they had something stronger: belief. The humans called their new fleet the Phoenix Wing. Their motto was simple: from ashes, we rise. Lyra stood before her pilots in the hangar, their faces lit by the blue glow of vengeance. She spoke clearly, her voice strong and calm. "The Council thinks we are broken. They think we forgot who we are. They think Kane's death ended us. But they are wrong. His death woke us up, and now we show them the power of humanity." The hangar shook with cheers. Their first major strike came days later. A Council supply convoy moved through the Dravos corridor, escorted by 3 warships. The humans attacked without warning, fast, precise, silent. The convoy didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, fire covered the skies. When the last ship exploded, a signal was broadcast across all channels. "This is the Phoenix Wing. For Commander Kane." The message spread through hundreds of systems before the Council could block it. Millions heard it. Billions wondered if it was real. Across the galaxy, something unexpected began to happen. Species that had once feared humans began to question the Council's rule. On the water world of Thaloria, miners refused to send resources to the Council's fleets. On the desert planet Ruthar, alien mercenaries painted the Terran symbol a red flame on their ships. And on the cold moon Ephra, a Council officer secretly sent weapons to the human rebels. The rebellion was no longer a secret. It was a movement. In the command room of the Ecto-1, Captain Redden watched reports from across the stars. "The whole galaxy's catching fire," he said with a grin. "I've never seen anything like this." Lyra didn't smile. Her eyes stayed on the screen showing the Council fleets mobilizing. "They'll come for us soon," she said. "They'll send everything they have." Redden leaned against the console. "Then what do we do?" She turned to him. "We make them remember what fear feels like." She pressed a button on her wrist communicator. "Activate Operation Emberfall." Hours later, a dozen human ships appeared near a massive council. Relay station, one of the biggest in the Outer Rim. The defenders didn't even have time to react. The humans jammed their systems, disabled their shields, and planted EMP bombs across the structure before retreating.
Gosh.
Lyra sent one last message to the station's commander. "You executed one human. Now the galaxy burns." The bombs detonated. The explosion was so bright that it was seen from orbiting moons. The Council called it an act of terror. The galaxy called it justice. Back on Orion's grave, the humans gathered in silence as they watched the explosion replay on the holoscreen. The light reflected in their eyes. Some smiled. Some cried. Lyra spoke softly. "The fire has spread. But we're not done. The Council will strike back harder than ever. We have to be ready." Captain Redden nodded. "And when they come?" She looked at him, her expression steady. "Then we show them why humanity survived everything the galaxy threw at us." She turned off the screen. The room went dark, lit only by the stars outside. Each star looked like a spark, and together they formed a fire that could not be stopped. The galaxy war had truly begun. The skies over Varax's Prime, the Council's shining capital, were darkened by the arrival of human ships. The Council had ruled the galaxy for centuries, but now their fleets trembled under a force they had long thought extinct. "High Chancellor." Varax paced in his grand chamber, staring at the holographic display, showing the human fleet approaching. "Impossible," he hissed. "This cannot happen. Humanity is gone." An aide stepped forward nervously. "Chancellor, our outer systems are falling. Entire colonies have joined the rebellion. They have weapons we can't track, tactics we don't understand." Varax slammed his fist against the table. Sparks flew from the metal surface. "They will pay. Every system, every ship, every human. Do you hear me? Total extermination." But even as he spoke, panic spread through the Council ranks. Reports came of fleets destroyed before they could even jump. Relay stations bombed, supply chains shattered. The galaxy was slipping from their control, and the Council didn't know how to stop it. On board Echo-1, Lyra Holt stood at the command deck, her eyes scanning the capital world below. Human fleet had grown, more ships joining from hidden colonies, old Terran vessels rebuilt, weapons upgraded. The rebellion had become an unstoppable storm. "Target coordinates locked," Lyra said, her voice steady. Captain Redden nodded. "We move in, for Kane, and for all of humanity." The humans launched their first strike. Eiders dove through the Council's defensive grids, dodging lasers and missiles with precision. Bombs hit key power relays. Shields fell. Communication towers were destroyed. For the first time in centuries, the capital of the galaxy was vulnerable. Deep in the Council chamber, Varax and his advisors watched helplessly. "Deploy the High Guard," Varax commanded. "Stop them at all costs." But the humans were already inside the outer perimeter. Lyra's voice echoed through the ship's comms. "Deck 1 to Phoenix Wing. Target the central energy core. Disable it." Now, a dozen ships accelerated, weaving between massive towers and defense turrets. The Council's fleet tried to respond, but human tactics were unpredictable, fast, precise, and fearless. Explosions tore through the capital's defenses. Smoke and fire filled the holographic displays. Council members screamed in panic as alarms blared across the chamber. Varax's face twisted in fury. "Impossible. Humanity is extinct. How are they here?" Meanwhile, on the ground, human operatives infiltrated the central command tower. Lyra Holt, wearing a reinforced suit, led the strike team. They moved silently through the corridors, avoiding patrols and security drones. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the Council, the place where decisions were made, where lives and worlds were controlled. At last, they reached the central chamber. The room was vast, filled with alien symbols and glowing panels. High Chancellor Varix stood at the podium, watching the city burn through the windows. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes locked on him. "Your reign ends today," she said. Varix's voice was like ice. "Humans, you are nothing. You are always nothing." Lyra shook her head. "No. One human stood against you. And now, we all rise. Kane's death lit this fire, and now you burn in it." The humans activated the chamber's controls remotely. Screens flickered and then went dark. Energy grids overloaded. The central core, once a symbol of council power, erupted in a blinding explosion. Varix screamed, thrown back by the force. Sparks and smoke filled the room. The holographic maps went dark. Communication links died. The Council's grip on the galaxy collapsed in minutes. Outside, fleets of loyalist species surrendered. Emmy had already seen the human strength and refused to fight. Some switched sides, joining the rebellion mid-battle. Lyra looked out the shattered windows at the burning city. "The galaxy is free," she whispered. On the distant observation decks, surviving council members fled, trembling. The so-called galactic rulers had lost everything in hours. Varix staggered to his feet, staring at the destruction. He had underestimated humans. Underestimated. Kane underestimated the will of a species that refused to die. "This cannot be," he muttered. But it was over. The Council's rule was broken, and humanity, once hunted and nearly erased, stood victorious. Back on Echo 1, Lyra and her crew celebrated quietly. There was no cheering, only a deep, relieved silence. The galaxy had been won, but at a cost. Every ship, every crew member, every victory had come from sacrifice, courage, and defiance. Captain Redden placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "We did it," he said softly. "Yes," Lyra replied. "But this is just the beginning. Humanity has a galaxy to rebuild." The stars outside the shattered council capital shimmered like fire, and somewhere across the universe, the memory of Elias Kane burned brighter than ever, the man whose death had sparked a rebellion that toppled empires. The council had fallen. The flame of humanity was now unstoppable. The galaxy was quiet. For the first time in centuries, the oppressive weight of the council had vanished. Planets once ruled by fear were free. Star systems that had trembled under alien tyranny were alive again. On the bridge of Ecto 1, Lyra Holt watched the stars. The human fleet had expanded beyond imagination. Ships rebuilt from ancient wrecks, crews trained in secret. And colonies that had hidden for decades now sailed under the Terran banner. Captain Redden leaned beside her, his eyes scanning reports. "The council is finished," he said. "Every system loyal to them has fallen or surrendered." "Yes," Lyra replied. Her voice was soft, almost reverent. "But victory is not just about defeating enemies. It's about what comes after. Humanity has a chance to shape the galaxy, not with fear, but with hope." Across the stars, news of humanity's rise spread faster than any weapon. Hidden colonies emerged from shadows. Planets once forbidden to humans opened their gates. Old allies returned. Even species that had once doubted humans now sent envoys to join the new order. A human fleet passed over the ruined capital of Varix's prime. Fires still burned. Smoke rose in twisted towers, but the people on those worlds cheered. The message was clear. Humanity had survived. Humanity would lead. Humanity would inspire. Deep inside a quiet starbase, Lyra activated a small holoprojector. The face of Elias Kane appeared, recorded before his death, a message meant for this moment. "They executed me because they feared what we could become. They thought one death would end the fire. They were wrong. From ashes we rise, from darkness we shine. Remember this, humanity will never surrender." The crew watched in silence, tears in many eyes. He had been gone, but his spirit had guided them. His death had sparked a revolution, and now the galaxy bore his flame. The Council's remaining leaders had fled to distant systems, but their time was over. They could not hide from the will of the stars, from the courage of humans, or from the unity that had grown across species inspired by one man's sacrifice. Human ships patrolled every major system not to conquer, but to protect. The Terran fleet, once nearly extinct, had become a symbol of hope. Its motto, "From ashes we rise," was now carved into every memorial, every starbase, and every fleet command. On Echo 1, Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy she had helped ignite. Captain Redden approached. "Do you think Kane would be proud?" She nodded slowly. He would. But this isn't just about pride. It's about the future. The galaxy has a chance to change, to remember what freedom feels like because humans fought for it. Redden looked at her, then at the stars, and the Council. "There'll be a story," Lyra said, a warning for anyone who thinks one species can be crushed, erased, or silenced. Humanity will be the spark for everyone who dreams of freedom. Across the galaxy, lights flickered on in colonies that had hidden for generations. Children played in open streets on planets once ruled by fear. Scholars taught knowledge that had been forbidden. Diplomats worked to build alliances, not empires. Humanity had become more than a survivor. They had become a legend. The man whose death lit the stars, Elias Kane. In the vastness of space, the Terran fleet sailed toward new horizons. Every ship, every crew member, every human on every planet carried the fire of Kane's spirit. They would explore, protect, and inspire. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown dangers, but also endless possibilities. Lyra looked at the stars again. A smile crossed her face. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. And somewhere, in every human heart across the galaxy, one truth burned bright. No matter how dark the universe, humanity's flame would never go out. The galaxy had been changed forever. The Council had fallen. The flame of humanity would light the stars for generations to come. The end.